The ones you discussed or contacted.
I think that the companies that we were looking at had demonstrated a specific aspect of what we would imagine a changemaker company to be. So they were really strong in a specific area or a specific bucket. So as a whole, we couldn't really find one organization that exemplified all of these values across the board, but we found examples of the different values in different places. And so what we were trying to do was pull the information together so we could demonstrate what different aspects of this would look like. But I think that we're still working on exactly identifying a company that exemplifies this vision as a whole.
Or they would self-identify as
that as well.
And I think that was a component too of, who within the organization or does their structure lend itself well to these ideas. So even if it's not present currently in the company as it stands, would there be people or divisions or departments that would be open to something like this or would kind of echo those ideals that we could work on further with the partnership? I think that was also something we were looking at in companies.
Great. Okay, we're at the time limit, so thank you so much. Rohi, your group wanted to go in.
Yeah. Well, we haven't got, I'll offer
Sorry, you're making a lot of promises to a lot of people.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. A lot of last minute requests. Can I have them out? And do you have a copy or no?
Did either of you send the link to him? Okay.
After your internship.
Yeah.
Rohi. I'll get it. It's fine. My email's up. Amazing. You move that way one second.
Right.
We'll try to let once on the side so people can see it. No. All right, fantastic. Group number 2.
So hi guys, what we did is we hacked our internships and we wanted to bring design thinking and design sprints across Ashoka. And so first we tested it out with some of you at our hack session. So thank you to all of y'all who came out to that. So what design sprints do is they basically crunch like months or weeks of half-baked and disconnected discussions into an intensive period of time. And so what they allow you to do is like, firstly, think like a startup and really pave paths that haven't been gone down before. And secondly, like just test ideas before implementing or launching them. And then thirdly, like really coming out of the process with actionable results. And so design sprints are really a stepping stone to a greater objective. So our objectives were really exploring design thinking and seeing how we can improve our internship experience and structure.
Okay, so this is sort of the process that we underwent throughout the course of our project. Initially, we had a different idea on where to go with the design thinking sprint. So we initially wanted to look at internal staff problems. So we each interviewed and had conversations with different staff members that we know and can just have a friendly conversation with. And we recognized different organizational and internal problems that they had, and we then analyzed them and saw where we could go from there, bucket them together to hopefully come up with a greater, broader solution. But then we recognized that this may not be as effective as we wanted it to be, and we may not be able to implement as many things as we would like to and have as large of outcomes. So we then shifted our focus and we decided to look at intern problems or challenges that different interns have been facing. So we planned a sprint around that and focused on different challenges that we recognized that we've heard a lot from different interns in different teams. And then this is sort of the format of a design thinking sprint, and we made sure to follow through with what one will look like in actuality. That might take days, weeks, months, whatever, in an extended period of time, but we crunched it all into 1 hour. So we made sure to distribute the times differently, but we made sure to go through each of the different steps so as to hopefully come up with solutions and that were actionable that we could actually come out with at the end. And then this is just sort of different companies that use design thinking methods. And I think what's really interesting is if you can look at each of the different 5 steps, they all focus on very similar things. I think what's interesting to look at especially is the first column is all about empathy, and which clearly Ashoka has large focus on. And it's really talking to individuals and interviewing people and spending a great time learning what the problems actually are to come up with better solutions based off of that.
In design team, there's just a couple main principles we want to use. Big one was finding actually integrated solutions, so not just having a bunch of different ideas coming at different angles, but actually having them all interwoven together to attack one problem. Using empathy and in the same vein, trying to attack the problem from the inside out, so actually being at the source of the problem rather than looking at it from an outside lens and just trying to find a solution from there. And lastly is just using a large collective of expertise, get them all in one area, in one room at one time, and have that be how we find a solution, not just go around from one person to the next, trying to piece together an idea. And the reason we want to do this, Ashoka, is one, empathy is a huge part of what Ashoka is trying to do within its organization, and then outside of that, and design thinking, one of its main tenets is itself empathy. We also have a lot of interns here at Ashoka every summer, so which means we have a lot of expertise within that, and that there's a huge part of Ashoka is what the interns are doing, so improving that relationship with the interns and their experience will help further what Ashoka can do in a larger scale. And lastly, a lot of these problems are in itself very complex, so it's hard to just use it looking at it from the outside or just having piece together solutions doesn't always get to the solutions, to the answers you want. So finding a way that can get it more integrated will help solve a lot more complex problems.
So yeah, after brainstorming for a little bit about what sort of challenges we wanted to focus on, with the interns specifically, these were the 3 that we came up with. And our original plan was to hopefully have enough people come to this sprint where we would have 6 groups and two groups working on each one, but we really only have enough for 2 groups, and we eliminated one of the problems, and we just talked about 2. So we kind of ended up not really talking about intern programming, and we talked about intern projects and staff / Ashoka engagement, because we thought that those were a bit more important than the intern program. So this is kind of what our sprint looked like. So our time block was an hour, but the actual sprint ended up being about 35 minutes, really like 45 minutes, just because we spent a bit of time talking about what design thinking was and sort of what the process of the day would look like. So yeah, we kind of had 10 minutes for each one except for the empathize and defines, actually sorry, yeah, whatever, 5, 5, 10, 5, 10. But we kind of went over on everything, and then we really ended up, we weren't supposed to kind of come up with solutions until like the very end, but I feel like as soon as we start talking about some of these problems, people try to come up with solutions like right away, because that's kind of, we all knew that that's what we were there to do, but the point of the sprint was not come up with solutions right away. It was to really kind of dig into the problem and talk about it, and kind of get to the root of the issue, and then come up with solutions, kind of towards the end of it. So yeah, we kind of did that, the 2 groups did that, and at the end they sort of presented to each other, and it was interesting because even though the groups had different problems that they were discussing, the kind of solutions ended up being sort of the same, because it ended up kind of broadening out to the whole internship experience.
Yeah, so you can see some of the products of our sprint. They're not that great looking, but what we kind of started doing with each of the steps is that we would brainstorm ideas, or we would talk about problems we had, we would cluster them, and then we would come up with an overall theme or category that we thought defined that cluster. And that way, yeah. And that way, then when we were looking at what the actual solutions was, so when we were in our brainstorming stage, we could look at the overall kind of problem categories. And I think that's sort of the strength of this process, is that you're all discussing and coming up with solutions for the same problems. And that's where if we had more time to really clearly define what the problem was, then we might have had an easier time coming up with solutions. But even so, we came up with a few interesting insights. One of the groups had, I think, like 5 or 6 solutions by the end of it. And so what you kind of want to do at the end of your design thinking process is come up with one main prototype and then start to test that. So we hadn't reached that stage yet. So our group after the sprint tried to figure out how we could try to summarize all of the various solutions we had. So we came up with 3 main insights that each lead to a particular action item. So the first insight is that internships at Ashoka should be really clearly defined around needs. So you would join a project within a team rather than just joining a team. And we think one way to put this into action is to come up with a set of criteria for how you actually define an internship position or an internship project. And we're working with Lily to come up with these criteria. And that way, any team that wants to get an intern for the summer, to get 8 interns for the summer, has to see that their proposal is matching up to these criteria. So that's number 1. Number 2, we feel that we've learned quite a bit over the summer from our projects, but also just from our exposure in this organization. But there are a lot of questions we had at the beginning that other interns from past summers probably could have helped us with, so that we were not wasting too much time on the little details. So our solution for this, or action item for this, is that we'll offer the chance for you guys to opt in to be contacted by a future intern. And so the next talent team intern could have a Skype call with me, and I could go over some of the details that her AP would need to spend time on. So that's just a really simple step. And then the third one is that since Ashoka has this big entrepreneurial focus and interns are really encouraged to take initiative and come up with their own projects, I think that's something that can be really empowering, but if you don't really have context around the needs within the organization or the projects that are already ongoing, it's actually quite challenging to do this. And so we want to have sort of a database or an online platform that contains information about past projects and also projects that are up for grabs. And this could also be a way for you to explore different teams, because you could start a project with Ashoka U even if you were from search. And then another piece to that, which is quite specific, is that when we offer the opt-in thing for the Skype calls, there's also an option to write maybe a sentence on the 3 main projects that you worked on. And that way we can have this big list of all the projects that the 60 of us did. And so then interns next year will get a better idea of what's happened. Cool, so that was the insights from our sprint. And then the final piece of suggestions we have moving forward. So our goal with this whole project, I think, was partly that we feel design thinking could be really valuable within Ashoka, because Ashoka is very empathy-based, just like design thinking. And there's also a lot of complexity and therefore a lot of room for improvement. And so we don't exactly know how this would be taken on. We think whoever is interested would really need to kind of learn more about it and could take the framework and structure that we've developed. But the 3 main items, 1, you need buy-in from staff across many different teams. And the reason for this is that in order to have truly effective solutions, you need a diversity of opinions and a variety of experiences, and you just need more people, is what we found. You can't do it in an hour. You need like more than 2 hours, but we're saying like 2+. And I think you need to develop a rhythm for it, because what we found, we were all brand new to design thinking, and it was hard for us to focus on one aspect at a time. We weren't really familiar with the process. And so the more practice you have with this actual methodology, the better you can use it. And finally, yeah, you need to commit to the process when you're working on it. So rather than just bringing people together and saying, let's brainstorm a solution, you actually focus on the empathizing and then defining and then so on. And we think that that way you can have a more nuanced understanding of the issue, but also you can have greater consensus when you reach the solution. If you have suggestions for how we can take our suggestions and actually do something with them, yeah, as well.
So is your group gonna actually be collecting like what each intern did this summer and what some of your PowerPoints?
Yeah, I think let's be open about that. I think what's kind of interesting is that the intern problems and the Ashoka-wide problems have parallels to them. And so we feel that if we're prototyping solutions within the intern cohort, then if we can show that those are effective, then we can expand them. So the most actionable piece is to start with the
Do you think if you like compile your findings, kind of make like a handbook, not even just like a resource and maybe some like guiding questions for what the next cohort can do to kind of keep this going? I feel like that would be a great way to kind of keep that. So provide a framework for everyone, just because you all have done so much work and you don't want any other people to waste.
Yeah. And even like the steps that we took, like the agenda that we sort of laid out for the sprint, I think you need to adjust the timing for the different sections, but I think that the steps are what would be good. Yeah, so if anyone wanted to host a sprint in the future, an intern group or an employee, then they could use this framework as well.
Just as a comment, I really liked some of the idea that you were like finalized within the presentation, like how you could potentially have a Skype call between like Ashoka interns with like upcoming Ashoka interns. And I think looking back, that would probably have been really helpful. And also like what you said about having Ashoka like really describe like the need that like an intern would be filling with several disciplinary projects, not just the teams. Just I thought that was really helpful.
Interesting question related to the point of like those suggestions. Did you guys end up seeing the feedback summary of suggestions for the internship program from last summer when you were coaching your project?
Yeah, we didn't know that.
Feedback from last summer was incorporated into like some of the orientation stuff, but yeah, probably gonna follow up with you.
We'll make sure next summer
So your feedback can go into the system to create this internal communication system. Great. Thank you.
Could I just announce it's being taped on Hangouts on Air, so this will be live right now, and then it can be streamed later. So what we probably want are people's presentations, and then if maybe you can send it to Marjana, and I can help you to put the link directly into the Hangouts.
Great, I have everyone. I'll create a box folder with links.
Yes, perfect.
Great. So
Should we go?
is that okay? Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I messed up numbers. Okay. Okay. Just give us their just. Okay. We're gonna meet. Wait, no, you're all one group.
Yes.
You're four. Your group's going to okay. I messed up numbers. Great. Very good. Cool. And you all do not have a PowerPoint, correct?
Yeah, but I sent you a link.
You did. Can you hit a? I got that. Skip.
Yes, we have access to this. Yes.
Alright, this is not serious.
Can we use this?
Yep, it's all yours. Alright, are you all set?
Okay. So our idea was basically we wanted to come up with a narrative to explain Bill and Ashoka's journey from his Harvard days to the evolution of Ashoka, essentially. And our main aim was to personalize and give a very contextualized and visual story of Ashoka. So we saw the video on our first day of the story of Ashoka, but we wanted to create something more accessible as like platforms are changing and the way people access information and are scrolling on their phones and things like that. We wanted to create an article that people can access anywhere and like that can be given out to interns, to staff members to just explain where Ashoka came from in a more like personal narrative through Bill's own words. So
we had a few ideas that we worked around with this initially that revolved around the same theme of explaining Ashoka's story. But we really like finalized on this one when we heard Bill's speech at the North America retreat, where he explained how he came up with the idea for Ashoka and his day and his time in India, and just Ashoka's journey from then on. And we found it to be really personal and really it connected with us. Like he explained how Ashoka's programs that we know as like Youth Venture and empathy and things like that now, really what they were as original ideas. So we wanted a way to convey that with like everyone else. So that's when we decided we'll write a Medium article. So that was the main idea. Some of the complications I think that we faced initially were that the audio file that we had from Bill's speech was hard to access and listen to, and we were trying to transcribe it, and that took some time because we really had to listen in. There was a lot of disturbance. We couldn't get an interview with Bill, so that was hard. Like just fact checking and using the resources that we had to create a narrative that was correct, that was right, and like we had this responsibility where we couldn't just like put something out there that was wrong. Was kind of like the hard part, but yeah, I think.
All right, so we chose Medium. For those of you who don't know, this is a blog publishing platform. It's pretty popular now. It was started by the Twitter co-founders, Evan Williams and Biz Stones, for Twitter users to put out content that was more than 140 characters. And Medium is a really great platform for publishing content, and people from all different walks of life use it, casual bloggers, all the way up to professional journalists. The Start Empathy team, for example, is using it to very good effect, helping educators get their thoughts out. So the reason we chose Medium was because we wanted to do something that was very visual heavy and quote heavy, more of like a photo essay kind of thing, because we didn't want to, spend all this time writing stuff that was going to be wrong based on the little bit of content we had. Medium makes it very easy to create a visual heavy article that looks professionally done in a WYSIWYG editor, which for those that don't know, it's just an awesome acronym for what you see is what you get. So basically it means you don't have to know any HTML or CSS or any other markup. You just see it there when you're making it, and that's what it looks like as a finished product. And as you can tell, it looks good. So yeah, another good thing about Medium is that it's automatically responsive. So if you're on a tablet or a phone or your big desktop computer at home, it always looks good. It has some nice constraints. So for example, like with these smaller pictures, I'm not in the editing. Well, with the smaller pictures, it only lets you choose from a couple different ways of laying them out instead of all the different ways. So it's pretty much impossible to make bad design decisions. So if you don't know much about editorial or graphic design, this is definitely a good thing to use. That also poses a bit of an issue because if you want to make it look like your own article and rather just another Medium article, it's really hard, if not impossible, to do so. So it's always going to look like a Medium article, which is good. It's up to you if you want that, though. Some of the challenges we faced, though, as we were making this is that we wanted to do it all visually, but we also needed to use pictures that were labeled for reuse so that we didn't run into any licensing problems when you finally put it out there. It's not published to the public yet, but that's the end goal. So that limited our choices in pictures a lot, and we also were unable to get access to the archival photos that the executive office has of Bill. We were really sort of hoping that we'd be able to use those to really contextualize it, but yeah, didn't pan out. But yeah, this is Medium, and if anybody's interested in using Medium, I can give you like a super quick crash course. It's really easy. Just speak to me after.
Yeah, so aside from trying to make it look good, which we did our best, and we were pretty happy, but at the end of the day, it's our prototype, so we're not fully confident in how it's going to be. And at the end of the day, it's a very collaborative effort, so we have to get different teams together to firstly fact check and get all of these pictures as sort of engaging as possible. But besides it looking nice, of course, we have to make the content right. And we wanted to start like from the very beginning and have this whole narrative from like the early days through to Ashoka today. But unsurprisingly, not many people have written about his newspaper in middle school, so those sort of things were like left unsaid. So we kind of started from the most important part of his start, and that was at Harvard. And so, like, as a thread through all of this narrative, it was always about trying to understand how things really worked. And for Bill, you can really start to see that in Harvard when he started the Ashoka table, which is where he got together speakers from all different sources, from like politics and the church and economics, all to come and teach students generally about societal issues and how to like implement societal change. So that's kind of how he started, and that's the first part of the essay. And this kind of inspired him. This inspired him to try to see the social changes that he was learning about, and that's why he went to India in sophomore year. And that was kind of really essentially the start of Ashoka, or the idea behind Ashoka. He got to meet with lots of inspirational like social entrepreneurs, as he defines them now, but at the time, obviously, there was no definition. And he got to meet these people who were doing kind of crazy things. There was this guy, Vinoba, who was a good friend of Gandhi, and to put it like crudely, he was essentially going around persuading people to give them their land and then giving it to poor people. So like it was a very innovative idea that was solving a lot of issues in India because it was very deeply ingrained in inequality, and that was perhaps like the first personal connection that Bill kind of got to the whole issue of social change. And although at that stage he wanted to lead a sort of development into Ashoka as it is today, he didn't have the resources, and until Carter came in, there wasn't really much opportunity to start those sorts of businesses. And so his real start, social change, came as an administrator in the EPA. And Cynthia can take on from that.
Yeah, and so people in the EPA, his supervisors, his colleagues, all really were astounded by him. If you read, there's a great Atlantic article about Bill, which we looked at a lot when we were kind of crafting this. But they kind of described him as like tiny, frail man that could be blown away by the wind at any moment. But the power of his ideas were really what struck them. And so I think one of the big things that he did, and you can see this kind of inception of Ashoka, was he went to India and he got these index cards and kind of networked his way through and used Team of Teams and networked his way through India and kind of asked people to refer him to like other people they thought were awe-inspiring and kind of changing systems. And so he eventually just kind of picked out like leaders in the field through like on the ground work and speaking with people. And so I think one of the first fellows ever elected was Gloria D'Souza, and she completely reformed education in Bombay. And so just like starting off of this, he got like 11 fellows, and with that kind of had a roundtable discussion, and from that they kind of talked about what it meant to be a social entrepreneur, what it meant to have these insights, and through mosaic building, which is pretty common to Ashoka and common to many of Ashoka's programs and getting insights, they were able to kind of evolve and see these patterns. And so I think that throughout this article, we can send it out as like kind of a draft prototype look-see. But some of the things that he says, like just taking the individual pieces and putting it together, I think really resonates with social entrepreneurs, but all of us, because we are all kind of had to do that through our internship and taking little pieces and putting it together. And so we kind of skip forward a couple decades, but we end up here today with Ashoka is still growing and evolving, and kind of how that's kind of the context of how everyone at Changemaker came to be. So, yeah. Again, this is kind of very prototype stage, but it's just an idea of how we can better share Ashoka's story and better share Bill's story.
We're still looking for people to fact check and maybe go through it and help give suggestions as to how we should improve this and also what sounds right wrong before we can send this to like people for permission to publish it. So if you're willing and want to read it, let us know. We'll send it out. Do you have any questions?
I mean, to be honest, it would probably be like a development on like a next interns communications project to sort of actually make this into a fully functional article. Because apart from this Atlantic article, which was published in 1999, I believe, there's been nothing, or not enough done really on like the narrative of Ashoka from Bill's sort of media. I know that's kind of, Ashoka sometimes tries to sort of avoid that, but like it's also sometimes useful to paint that narrative as well. So that's like future communication.
So what's the most interesting thing that you learned in the process?
I think the fact that he actually drove from Munich to India to walk with this guy, Vinova Bobby. And he actually literally walked with this guy who was walking across the Indian continent to redistribute land. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And what's your biggest takeaway of all of these?
I don't know if it was, I would say it was a takeaway. It just made everything very real. Like listening to the audio for me was like trying to understand how an organization was actually formed and built instead of like we come into Ashoka and Ashoka's already there and it's already doing all these big things. These programs have definitions and descriptions and they're all bigger than you. But when someone talks about like how the idea actually took form, it actually makes it much more human. Like, okay, this is something I can like understand and level with, which was really interesting. And like he talks about how when he went to India, he said the biggest thing that hit him was like there was so much disparity. So what is one sophomore who doesn't have access to money, who doesn't have access to people who do about such huge problems, right? So it's like, oh, I'm in that same position. I don't know what to do about this world, but he was in the same position. And I think the biggest insight that he had at that point, he said, like, what can we do? It's like, what is the biggest source of change? And he said it's a great idea in the hands of an entrepreneur. So that was his insight when he was a sophomore. And it was like very simple. It was this idea of being a connector and bringing people together, right? So that was the biggest takeaway from me as a person. It's like, you know, even if you think you can't do anything, you just kind of have to like, there was someone who did. So.
Right, and so like, we chose the title, like at the beginning only 2 or 3 people took us seriously, and I think for that it resonated a lot with us and kind of the problems that we were talking about, like way in the beginning of the interdisciplinary orientation week, where we're like, oh, we feel really small, we feel like we can't change things, but like Bill, like put himself in a place where he could, and like through like these tiny little steps, through these index cards, through walking with Vinova, and so all these kind of like little things kind of came to like represent this like huge like nonprofit that is doing so much.
I don't know which time. Sorry.
I just have one more question. Have you guys, this from what I hear is like a lot of like secondary sources, but have you guys done any like primary resources, like the first 11 fellows and emailing them to see like how were they approached and like what was the conversation that they had, and to see what it is like today, what that process, how much that's changed, and or even talking to people who like where did he must have had a collaborative something, like people that are willing to give at least some sound bites of what the process was like at the time.
I think that that's a great idea and something that we would have loved to do more of, but without being able to interview Bill and get who those people really were, it was a little more difficult. We were just going off of what he said, and we wanted to keep it to what he said since it was about him and we're new, frankly. So, but yeah, if we had more time and more resources, then definitely that's a fantastic idea.
But definitely when we were listening to him, he does mention like, oh, when we were starting the first mosaic building, which was Youth Venture, like it was just 11 of them, and they went to Bangladesh in Dhaka and had this meeting with like citizen groups and with education, like policy makers and things like that. And I'm sure that process must have been really crazy, and like we could talk a lot more if we went into detail and if we spoke to those people. You know, this was back in the 80s or 90s when they were trying to level with Bangladeshi like government people telling them empathy is a thing. So like I'm sure it would have been interesting, but like I think if someone wants to take this forward, that would be a cool.
We're at time now, so I'm gonna have next group. Thank you. So this group's going next. And also, I know that there's Bill's party tonight, so maybe we can get some more questions asked.
Yeah.
A little investigative reporting there.
All of us.
I'm gonna grab the mouse there. You can just open up your presentation. Sorry.
All right. Hello, everybody. On behalf of my group, we'd like to discuss with you our project over the course of the summer, which, as many of you guys know, was airtime. So before I get started, just get a quick show of hands. Who was lucky enough to have attended airtime over the course of the summer? All right, awesome. All right, well, great. So we're just going to quickly go through how the project came to be, some of the steps we took to get it to where it was, and using the feedback that we received, how to make it better, and then where we see it going from here. So from the start, we had a situation, right? Well, about 60 interns came in on June 1st. We had a great first week of training and a little time for personal reflection of what we wanted to get out of the summer. And we also knew that we had such an intelligent and diverse cohort of young college students and beyond, with many different talents and interests to share amongst with each other over the course of the summer. We also knew that we were also divided into different teams, and to go along with a lot of these interests that we had, we were unfortunately put in separate teams, and we knew that there was going to be opportunities for us to collaborate with one another, but we didn't know how exactly we could get there.
So, and that's kind of how we came across the complication. We were put into these individual teams, and we realized it was very easy to be focused on what your specific team is working on. And as you dive into the work, as you're getting projects, it became harder and harder to find the time to reach out and collaborate. And in such an entrepreneurial focused organization, we knew that was encouraged, but also as interns, we weren't sure how to go about reaching that subject. LGM's time and higher up time are so precious, and also interns are always working on their own individual things. Where do we find that overlap? And so in one of our first meetings, we were talking about what we all were working on. We realized that was a question we had to ask, was what project are you working on currently? And that wasn't something that we innately knew or had access to at the time. So our first idea that we kind of threw around was creating a lunch dating service where we set up interns to have lunch or coffee with people and actual employees at Ashoka and have them foster kind of collaboration and conversations there. Except we realized that wasn't always necessarily a value add for both sides. So what would be the best environment to put everybody in that had and wanted and had a drive to collaborate, and then what would that look like? So that's where we came up with our resolution. We thought it would be really helpful to hold a weekly intern gathering and Ashoka Intern Roundtable, hence the name Airtime, designed to provide a space for interns to share what they're working on, share opportunities for collaboration, share if you have free time and would love to help out on a project, as well as using that time to dive into people's minds and think of
and gain insights and resources from each other and make sure that we're actually creating that collaboration and working as a team of teams, because that's something we realize is much easier said than actually done. So.
Okay, so what did we talk about? Some of the things we talked about included staying motivated throughout the day, because a lot of times an 8-hour day is something a little new to people, and the days can get a little tough and boring, and it's hot out. It's a little unrelated, but basically we want to sort of like motivate each other. We found that everyone's sort of compartmentalized in their own spaces. It's hard to keep yourself going throughout the day, keep yourself motivated, especially when you sometimes lose touch with the big picture, which I know some of us often do. Another thing we talked about were long-term goals and career plans. This was more towards the end, like the last couple sessions, but being part of Ashoka, like being here is great for Ashoka, but it's also great for us moving forward with our lives and taking things we learned with Ashoka and bringing them to whatever we do next. And so an important thing is to collaborate and to share ideas about where to go from here. I know there's some people who are in graduate school, so they share their experiences there and gave advice. And in our last session, everyone talked about different connections they have with different organizations that people could use to sort of find the pathways right for them. Third, we talked about lessons learned. I guess it's good sometimes to like step back and think about like what am I actually learning here. And so we sometimes get out into smaller groups and talk about things we're learning along the way, skills, stuff like that. And then how to end your time at Ashoka. Some of our airtime was more reflective, and we looked at the bigger picture of goals and things we wanted to accomplish. And fifth, where do we go from here? This is sort of similar to career plans, but what's the next step after Ashoka? Because I know a lot of us are still in college and are looking towards our future, excited about our future, and know where you're next. And then what were the benefits? Obviously, one of the primary focus was to cultivate collaboration, which it did. And some examples are Jordan helped with impact evaluation with change makers. Zach helped with as a bunch of other different collaborations that were spawned by airtime and by everyone getting together and talking about airing those opportunities. It provided a space for interns to learn from one another's experiences. This was sort of more of like a formalized setting where people could really talk. And I know people can, there's places they hang out and share their experiences elsewhere, but this one is more of a formal setting where like, that was the point, was to learn from each other's experiences. And it definitely helped foster a team of team experience among the interns. I know we say the phrase team a lot, but sometimes you get the feeling that that's kind of like an illusion that like the team is just like someone say and it's not really real. And I think we sort of saw that it is kind of real, and this is what we're doing.
So to add to what Mason said, we also chose Monday as the day we do our gatherings. That as you're starting your week, you're kind of getting like a fresh start, like what everyone else as the other interns working on different projects where you can collaborate with them and discuss stuff. And we really cared a lot about getting feedback about what we were doing. So we sent a survey and got pretty like a lot of positive feedback. People liked being able to learn about what everyone else is doing and being able to collaborate with them. And we also got very constructive feedback too. So we initially started with the idea that we will have like everyone go around and talk about what they project. It took like 15 minutes I think in the beginning. And people like thought that was probably not what they wanted to focus on, so we kept that a little shorter. And we made that and we structured the gatherings in more of a topic related kind of setting. So we come in and talk about motivation and we talk about your next steps or just kind of more structured steps. So that was basically how we incorporated all the feedback that we got to
influence there's also a little bit more in
And I guess something, sorry, I probably should have, for all the people that didn't attend, kind of the structure of it, it was really interesting to see how it evolved over time. So originally we got in there and our idea was to go round robin, what is everyone working on, and opportunities for collaboration. And as Amal said, we did that. It took a lot of time and people said it wasn't necessarily the most beneficial use of their time. So we kind of cut that shorter and made it more small group discussions because people really enjoyed that. So still discussing and bringing up this opportunity for collaboration while also fostering those smaller group settings where you can pick people's brains about whatever topics were of interest of that week. And that's something else we gained from the survey was what people wanted to talk about. The long-term goals, how to end your relationships here in the most productive manner. So really taking that feedback and constantly evolving the process to make it as beneficial to all the parties involved, which is kind of where Megan's gonna come in.
Yeah, so moving forward, we figured, everything wrong. So moving forward, we figured.
Got it.
Okay, moving forward, we figured, so a lot of the work that we did and a lot of what was difficult about this was just figuring out what needs to exist, what is beneficial to people, just more of the conceptual groundwork. But once you have that set, the actual process of setting up meeting times, creating agendas is not that difficult. So we wanted to be able to pass that on to future generations of Ashoka interns. So we created a kind of how-to document for this is what we did, this is what worked well, this is what didn't work well, this is how we came to see it. How do you guys want to see it? And I actually emailed that to Scott this morning to try to get it passed on to the next cohort of interns to see, hey, this was a beneficial thing that we did last summer. Maybe if we have this and iterate on this, innovate with this, then this could be beneficial to future interns as well. Another thing that we're doing moving forward is on our last session, we had everyone kind of list different organizations they had worked with in the past or contacts that they had at different organizations that they felt would be relevant to everyone at Ashoka. So we created a spreadsheet of the suggestions that people had put out there that people can continually reference. And did you want to talk about that last point?
So another thing how we ended our last session was just letting people have the opportunity because we have so many different experience levels from freshmen in college to graduate students, the lessons they've learned over their time. So people kind of, as they felt compelled to, stood up and gave advice for interviews, advice for cover letters, how to ask for recommendations, how to make sure you're utilizing your network to the fullest. And we compiled that in a document and sent it out to the interns so that those who weren't able to attend the session could also read the point and kind of add to that as we move on.
I think the kind of common theme that you'll see throughout all of this is we have approximately 50 interns here this summer. Everyone's from different backgrounds. Everyone has all these different experience, different areas of expertise, all of this advice to share with people. But how do we create a space, whether virtual, whether through systems, whether through the intern airtime itself, where it's an easy access point where that can be shared rapidly and then proliferate among itself. So thank you all so much for attending, for sharing your expertise, and also for hearing about what we did right now. And we would love to gather any feedback, any questions that you have about what we did.
In 2 minutes.
Share the links of the last session, the collaboration file, so we can like input that information if we did not attend the session.
Yes, we sent it out over the intern listserv. You didn't get it over? Cool. We'll send it to Scott.
Yeah, we'll work out that complication.
I don't know. We'll work on that, but yeah, definitely. Sorry.
What would you say is the biggest lesson learned with respect to the team of teams, organizational structure as we are trying to work with companies and organizations to help them achieve this? Any advice for us?
Well, I think obviously no offense to you, but I think one of the good things was getting the adults out of the way. Because it just felt more open that way.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like so hierarchical.
I would say, kind of going off of that, kind of a conceptual point we took away is, like we said, we started with this really systematized, like say what you're working on, say what you want help with kind of structure, that kind of hierarchical, but we find that that's not really natural. That's not how organic collaboration happens. So, and I think I see where moving with partnerships is more of that kind of long-term relationship. If you are constantly and consistently in contact with people, if you feel like you have that organic foundation for collaboration to naturally arise, that's a much more fluid and adaptable system than trying to systematize every little piece of it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I think, especially from an intern level, adding on to that real quick, is something we talked about in design thinking, is that it's really easy for you all to stand up here and tell us you should collaborate with people, and we know we should, but giving interns the opportunity to do that in a more formalized setting until we kind of get our comfort level and feel as if we can reach out in a more natural or organic way was really helpful. And maybe realizing at what level it is most influential or most pivotal to then spread throughout the team. So I started collaborating some with Framework Change on their mavens, and then I was able to pass those names on to my LGM Stuart, and now he's utilizing them. But maybe intern collaboration isn't the most pivotal way to do that. Maybe it is holding such a kind of session with LGMs or with the consultants or at whatever level, and then realizing where it spreads the most.
So we're at time. Thank you so much. So your PowerPoint will either be sent it via PowerPoint down there.
We actually are.
Which one was your?
Quick suggestion for PowerPoint. I think it'd be cool to put that in your name for you guys. Because I know I've been like sending feedback.
Right. So if anyone wants to make edits, especially adding their names or email addresses, I will take the new PowerPoints and I'm going to create a box file to share this for future reference. So please, if you did not put your name or emails, I can, yeah, just resend them to me.
Oh, okay.
Y'all are up.
Hello, everyone. We're going to introduce ourselves first and then give you a sense of what our project was. My name's Jacqueline. I'm Megan. I'm Rachel.
Justin?
I'm Sabrina. I'm Lillian. And our project this summer was to redesign the 20th floor conference room, which we named the CoLab. So first of all, any of you been in the 20th floor conference room or worked in there or live in there? Okay, what are your feelings about it? Anyone want to throw out adjectives that you would use to describe?
I'm sorry about it. We were.
Okay. Depressing. Yeah.
No windows, like solitary confined. No.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's some of the feedback we got, and now we'll pass it on.
Yeah, so we all came into Ashoka with this idea of team of teams and how we're going to work and collaborate across teams and all of these wonderful things. But where do you do that? A lot of us work on the 20th floor, and a lot of the teams in Ashoka work on the 20th floor. A lot of teams that should be collaborating. But we found that there was really no space to actually like create our projects. You know, Synapse is where you present your projects. It's very official. A lot of official people come in and they present. But where do you actually like begin these projects and start these projects, work on these projects? The 20th floor conference room ideally should be that space, but as we've heard, it's a depressing area. You have these bulky, broken chairs, the lights that the building management refuses to fix, the paint scratches in the paint. It's just overall a very like depressing environment to be in, not somewhere where people want to come together and collaborate. So that's how we came up with CoLab, the Collaboration Laboratory. So we are redesigning this room to make it into an inviting space to create, collaborate, and innovate.
Okay, so well, with all redesigning and all kind of like renovating, and always we're always going to run into more obstacles, and I think one of the main ones is money and fundraising. And so our subcohort project does not have any money.
We officially have $40.
But then, like to begin with, none of our subcohorts had any money to kind of do any project, especially with redesigning rooms. And so we really had to figure out how we're going to be able to find to get the money to it. It's like repainting walls or like getting furniture. And so that took a lot of planning, and so we eventually decided to sell our furniture on Craigslist. We kind of went through a whole fiasco with like this lady that was negotiating with. But we sold all those sad, broken chairs. Did sell those broken, no, just kidding. We didn't sell the broken one. We didn't sell the broken one. It's weird. Okay.
The chairs worked. I can verify it. They're okay.
Yes, they definitely worked. So we were able to sell the chairs. So far, we have we're still trying to sell the tables so that we can also get more money. But in terms of finances, we had to go. We either we had to get money ourselves to be able to buy the chairs that we actually have, or we went actually to the finance team to get petty cash and borrow money from them. Had sort of like this whole receipt exchange type of thing. And then now we have some additional cash from the selling of the chairs, and we're going to use that for some other designs that we're going to talk about later. And in terms of like other ideas we had that also actually became obstacles, like painting the wall. We unfortunately, because the walls were painted last year, we can't repaint them again this year. And then the lighting, we can't really fix the lights because it's sort of like the building's issue. And then the decor, we talked a lot about what kind of decors we want to make it and how to make this a graphic space, which people will go into a little bit more later.
Where we're at now. These are photos of the expedition to deliver the new chairs to the 20th floor. And yeah, so as you can see, that was one of the newest staples to the room. These nice comfy chairs. The blue is a nice, common color. That was a lot of things we talked about, was colors, and the orange, big orange chairs from before were very aggressive. These are nice. And we're now in the process. I think we're gonna get some new lamps that we're gonna pick up next week. Yeah, they're nice lamps that have some nice settled lighting. And yeah, so that's where we're at right now, and then we'll go into, like we were saying, some of the tour discussion.
So when we had this chaotic space that we had to work with, we had some ideas on I guess exactly what kind of mentality we wanted to bring to the space. And so we kind of came up with these three: creativity, openness, and comfort. That would help us to create a space where ideas and inspirations could ricochet, as we designed the conference space as kind of a sister space conceptually to Synapse Central, where teams, as we were talking about before, could synthesize and organically create this this project or this idea or whatever they want to accomplish in that space in a more organic and comfortable way. And we really didn't have a space on the 20th floor to do that yet. So that was our proposed vision for the space.
So, okay, so we've brainstormed a lot and came up with some small design details that we hope to can bring bigger changes. So this is the original floor plan, well, it's still now. This is the old floor plan. And as you can see, like, we have, so these are the tables, and they're a bit of everywhere if you walk in. I guess part of the sense of disorganization is because there's no centerpiece within the room. So going in, you kind of feel overwhelmed. You don't know where things are. There's stuff on the floor. So the first change that we come up with is to move the big table to the middle so that once you go in, you already have a focus. And that is where the main meeting space for bigger meetings. We also decided to move the tables, the smaller tables, the awkward ones, to the corners, and they will become more individual workspaces. The idea of this is to just make it a more composed space to begin with. And then for comfort as well, lights. A lot of people have complained about just having bad light in the room, and part of it goes with not having windows. So we'll be getting just, very comfortable looking, like soft lighting, like IKEA style lamps, and putting them in the corner, especially strategically near the workstations. This is also where the broken lamp is. The broken
So now that it's comfortable, we decide to also add some life and things that could inspire creativity and discussion. So these little green dots are plants. So these are just small budget details that we hope to add in. We're trying to get succulents, so they're low maintenance. You don't need to water them as much. But at the same time, like seeing this life and just making it a more comfortable space, we hope to create inspire creativity. Last but not least, and this will also go further into the need your help with, is these walls. If you go in, you realize right now they're completely blank. And honestly, staring at a blank wall, as Scott earlier said, is like solitary.
Solitary confinement.
That, staring at that wall sometimes feel like that. So we're hoping to add decoration and also something, an inspiration wall to add some life to the room. And now Megan will talk more about that.
So we want this room to be all about team of teams. So okay. So it's going to be a team of teams room. So in that fashion, we kind of want to just hear from you what you guys would think would fit us in our inspiration wall. So we've come up with 3 ideas, which we'll go into. So the new fellow showcase. So this is our idea to try and come up with a wall that would be pretty low maintenance. Once we set it up, it could be up for the year and no one would really have to think about it. And so this would be putting up pictures and big descriptions of our new fellows as well as all about their organization to try and just, show all our support for these fellows. So that was our first idea. And then our second one is actually Rachel came up with this or spoke about it, yeah. So instead of having a big map up and you putting your dot, so I'm from Chicago, so instead of putting that dot, we'd put big sheets of paper, and so we'd still say where are you from, but instead of me putting it out on it, I would say, I would draw a bear symbol for my favorite sports team, or I would go into kind of my roots and draw a beer because I'm German, something like that. So it could be super creative, and we hope that by the end, it would have a big wall just, showing where we're all from. And it's kind of the idea that, at least this isn't what I'm envisioning, so you're in the 19th floor conference room, you're in the 20th floor, you're in the collab, you're walking around, you're kind of maybe out of ideas with what you're working on the table, and so you just, kind of let some steam off. So that's kind of our idea with this interactive inspiration wall. And then our last one is the team of teams interactive map. And so this is the idea that we speak about team of teams a lot, and yet at least us interns kind of have a hard time, we all talked about this a little bit, but knowing what each team is doing. So we envision setting up a map that kind of has filtration in the middle and then has big bubbles out with each team as well as each diamond, as well as descriptions. But then the hope is that if you're in the room and say, so I'm on a health for all team, I could write a little blurb about exactly what I'm doing right then. So it wouldn't be just interns, it would be hopefully people who are heading to department 2. So that the hope is that if more blurbs are added and then you come in and you're reading them, then you might see, well, oh, that actually pertains to my project right now. I should reach out to this person. It's kind of a way of opening up this team of teams idea and making it more accessible, but in an interactive and fun way. So after that, we're going to pass out sticky notes, but that's too much. So we just want to do a raising of the hands on what you guys think would be the best ideas that we can move forward from here. So, New Fellow Showcase. What do we think of that one? Okay, Sonia. No, I wasn't kidding. Okay. Where are you from? Okay, what about the last one? Yeah, we like that one the best too, we think. But so do you guys think it would be useful, or do you have any feedback on ways that we can make it even better, make it more interactive? Yeah.
Lazy Susan.
A lazy Susan?
Sherwin South.
Oh, you mean the room?
Okay, no, we also, that's a good idea too. You want a lazy Susan? You can add that in.
Yeah, actually, during our search team's outsourcing today, our AP actually came up with also one that's very good idea to use this room, and that's actually to use this, make this conference room into a lunchroom where people can actually come in and eat together in the room, because a lot of times we either just leave our offices and go eat outside, or we go somewhere random and eat alone. I don't know, whatever we usually do. There isn't really a collective space where people can come together and actually eat together and
have conversations about what their work is and things like that. But everybody has lunch. It's just that not everybody has a common space to go to. And so potentially this conference room can actually also become a collab where you're not only working together, but you're also eating together. I'm sure.
Sorry, you broke my heart when you said there was no collective lunch there. You meant on the 20th? Because we have the cafe.
Yeah, on the 20th. 20th. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Oh yeah, I know like from the talent side, we updated the floor maps. It'd be cool like, with the two teams map to like have that floor map blown up, and you can maybe like get a piece of yarn, and if you're working with someone, you can connect yourself to them and put like post notes as this we're working on together. See how you're working with each other teams.
Blowing up the map, yeah, of the actual office. I think it's just helpful in general.
Yeah, it just needs to be updated every like month or so. People love moving around, or you get like incoming staff departures and stuff.
That's why hopefully we'll make it so it would be easily movable.
Oh yeah.
Somehow.
You can move your face around.
Yeah.
Using like whiteboards.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be cool to show like how it'd be cool to be like, oh, Reem and I are working together on this thing that people might not think of. So it's not inspiring. It feels great. Like you should be there too. Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yes. This isn't any of the ideas, but you really been mirrors. Mirrors open up a space with no windows.
Or like make a big window cutout and put like a picture of outside. And,
Like with palm trees and stuff?
wanted to do a little mural, but
Or if you put four mirrors together, it looks like a window.
Yeah, it does.
Why don't you do like a vase of plants?
we've already said that.
All right, we're at time. One more suggestion though. I think.
Oh, I was just gonna ask a question. It's a little embarrassing on my part, but I had the perception that the 20th floor conference room was just like the search office, and I don't think that's like an uncommon perception. So what are you going to do to try to overcome that mindset?
Well, we have to take into account that once the interns leave, it probably isn't just going to be our search team. So we're trying to think past that into. So, but next summer when interns come back, I'm sure it'll get readjusted.
And that's sorry. It's also like a fluid space, so like how you said, it's like the meeting room in the corner to workspace, like workstation. So like regardless if it's a search team or not, just go in. We also have our awesome logo, which is on the first slide. So
That's a good logo.
In front of like on the door, and then also.
Cool.
All right.
Excited to see evolution.
Oh.
One more, yeah. Quick.
Thank you guys. This is awesome. Love that you mentioned using that subject sister and space with me, as you mentioned. What advice do you have for caretaking space? Something like that master is not central. And I would love your input on making sure all the hard work that you're doing is taken care of prior to
That actually kind of, we didn't quite mention this, but next steps would be creating a sheet for the interns with our plan, our vision for the space in case we don't get all the work done. So that can be carried on. We can do that to the vision coordinator. In addition, we could also have a space culture, like a sheet of how you interact within the space for collaborative and organic problem solving and kind of synthesis of ideas. Along with that, I'm sure we could have some kind of broadcast to people using the space.
You keep moving, so we're behind already. So thank you so much. And share it. All right. It might be. Let's try it. What's yours? This one? Oh, you're surprised? Is it good?
I guess.
Your team name?
No. I just think that's how is it stored?
It's just, it's honestly.
It's not quite.
But it was around 20. I don't know.
No, it's
Everyone's standing over here. Is it because that Mine doesn't do that.
All right, next one up.
Are you good on
Okay. Hi everyone. So for our project, we originally picked one of the ideas that was presented in that original PowerPoint with original ideas, unsure of what we were getting into, but it actually ended up being a very interesting project. So we are working with this woman who works at Ashoka named Ann Evans, who is working with this organization called Coursera Connect, which is basically this very cool organization that uses technology, this certain type of technology that their founder David Stevens has patented, that basically brings very low cost internet to people anywhere in the world. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But basically, we talked to David Stevens, who's a really interesting guy. Immediately, he added us on LinkedIn and immediately endorsed us all for social entrepreneurship. And he said he really believes in what Ashoka's doing. And basically, because of that, he wants his organization to partner with Ashoka for this sort of partnership. And yeah, so I guess we'll talk. Okay, cool. Yeah, so our role basically in this project was twofold. We were first going to, for Anne and Coursera, analyze fellows that Ashoka currently has in areas that Coursera was looking to expand their technology in. So we worked primarily with South Africa, Malawi, and Zambia. And Chidera and Divya will talk a little bit later about our model for analyzing these fellows, but basically that was the original goal. And then some of the members in our group, who we kind of lost a lot of our group, but we're also interested more in like visual and graphic sites. So we were thinking, how could we incorporate that into our project as well? And we mentioned that although Coursera, which we talk about technology, has this amazing idea, it's not gotten across very well. And so we thought, let's make some sort of like video or something that the fellows can use when they are going out and trying to like make partnerships with the community and with Coursera to like facilitate the mission. So like basically what the partnership was about is that Coursera gets access to these fellows who are on the ground working in these areas and can promote this technology. And if they promote the technology, then these fellows get access to increased connectivity. And in return, basically what Coursera does is with this model for internet, they get their profits through mobile money. So they get a small transaction with mobile money companies, and they take a small amount of the profit, and then Ashoka will get a small amount of that profit. But so first we wanted to just play this video. Yeah, play this video that basically, this is part of what we're working on. It's not entirely done, but it will give you a little gist of what we're trying to get into, what the message and tone we're trying to get across. So
this is our first draft.
It's our first draft, and it ends very abruptly.
You have the button there.
Imagine a world in which every person could connect to the internet, where a young student can use their solar charged $35 tablet to do internet research at home as part of their homework, where an impoverished mother could access health advice to care for her ailing infant, where an entrepreneurial young person could take a business course or get mentorship from a corporate executive several thousand miles away, where a shopkeeper could easily purchase goods via a tablet, and the goods could be traced all the way from their source to the post office where the shopkeeper picks them up, where a young person could start an online business 500 kilometers from the nearest city, where a refugee could learn an internet-based business skill, then relocate more easily because she can take her business with her. Today, approximately 60% of the world's population, 4.3 billion people, lack a broadband internet connection at home via computer or a mobile device. Across Africa, fewer than 1 in 10 people have such a connection, while penetration is only 19% in India and 16% in Indonesia. In addition, 80% of the world's poor, or 2.5 billion adults, lack access to formal financial services, especially low-income populations in developing economies. In many emerging markets, the lack of or inadequacy of internet and communications technology limits access to reliable information and to the only transaction capability so critical to achieving financial stability and an improved quality of life. This is about to change.
hay muchas cosas que desconocen. ¿Sí? Entonces, el uso de Internet es una ventana al mundo para que el chico descubra y aprenda.
Coursera Connect, a social business organized as an L3C company, has solved the problem of how to provide affordable internet in underserved and remote areas with a unique approach. Using patented technology that expands the number of people who can be served by one satellite from 10 million to 200 million, Coursera is able to bring down the cost of connectivity to something the poor can actually afford. Beginning in such places as Malawi and Zambia, but eventually reaching the poor and underserved areas across the world, Coursera Connect will provide affordable broadband internet access and an open mobile money platform via solar-powered satellite and wireless communications.
Yeah, so it's like way longer, but this is where we are in the process, and we just thought it would be better to show like a pretty good first 2 minutes rather than kind of crappy, like all of it. So that kind of gives you basically when we've done we finish this video, we're going to then pass it up to Anne, who can then give it to Coursera, and any Ashoka fellows who we have identified as potential fits who want to talk to the people they work with about Coursera, because they played this video and it's this beautiful inspiring bit that they want to use. So
I'll go for you. Nope.
yeah. All right, do you want to talk about this?
Okay, so so the technology. All right, so what Coursera does is to they use something called motorized earth station antennas, and these motorized earth station antennas utilize inclined orbit satellites. And inclined orbit satellites, I'm just going to read it to you because it's a really complicated technology. You have me say it, I'm going to read it. So inclined orbit satellites are geosynchronous satellites that have been repositioned away from the primary orbit because of depleted fuel levels. So because these satellites are no longer capable of positioning themselves from space, they're considered defunct and they're left neglected. The satellites are still powered by solar energy, and so they're capable of data transmission. And so the MESA systems, the motorized earth station antennas, track inclined orbit satellites from Earth, and they lower power requirements render this technology more affordable and energy efficient.
Yeah. So it's still very complicated, but basically what Anne told us that's like really interested in it is Coursera takes these satellites up in the sky that they ran out of fuel to get them to move around to adjust the antennas. So they're kind of deemed useless, except they're not because they're still solar powered to transmit data. So Coursera developed this technology where the satellite on the ground is actually what moves. So it can still use these satellites that would otherwise be useless. And then they go and partner with mobile money and financial services in like rural areas in parts of Africa. And these like services set up the satellites and anybody can use them. And basically when people use mobile money to transfer funds, a small portion of the funds goes to them. And that's technology.
Okay. So part of what we were doing was analyzing fellows in Zambia, Malawi, and South Africa, and we did this to figure out whether their work could help further Coursera Connect's mission. And so what we looked for, the criteria that we used to analyze the fellows, were their capacity to spread, deepen, advise, augment, and replicate Coursera's work. And so what we meant by spread was just figuring out if the fellows' work could be spread across a larger beneficiary network. When we talk about deepen, we were wondering if the fellows' work could connect Coursera to rural development facilitators, so people who are on ground who would be able to encourage their communities to use Coursera's technology. And then we were looking for fellows who could advise Coursera and who had experience with like the local communities and the way that they governed themselves. So fellows who had experience with the mayors or with the government, with other forms of government in their locations. And then we were also looking for fellows who could augment Conser's work. And so by augment, we were looking for fellows who could identify new forms of applications for this. So besides mobile learning, what other ways could Conser's technology benefit the communities that they worked in? And then we were looking for fellows whose work could help replicate Conser's impact. Yes. And so Ken Banks is a great example of a fellow who fits this criteria. So he's working to bridge the digital divide in the citizen sector. So he created a mobile platform that change makers in local communities can use to help co-create solutions to problems that their communities face. And so because he's already working with mobile phones, he's already working with change makers within communities, he would be an awesome person, a great spokesperson actually for this partnership.
So basically at the end of this in total, we've looked at 73 fellows. So we've looked at all the fellows in Malawi and Zambia to sort of identify which ones we think would best be able to help Consero sort of expand and grow in the region, or actually, launch. And also what would help the fellows spread their work. We're still working on South Africa, so that there are a lot of fellows, I think it's over 300. And then this video, hopefully, that we're working on creating.
Yeah, a really interesting thing that Anne said in the beginning that I remember that made us want to get involved was she said something like, if this project pulls through, you could say that you had taken part in revolutionizing universal internet for the entire world. And you're like, yeah. Yeah, it's been
Cool. All right, this is space for one question if anyone has a burning question that I think is worth.
I'm just curious in terms of when you made the video, was it all your own content or did Consero already have these clips?
Consero had some of the clips, especially the Mexican people where they were working in El Estado, Mexico previously, so we took that clips. A lot of the other stuff was stock footage.
Great voiceovers. All right, one more question. All right, two more questions.
Mine is a comment. I just wanted to congratulate you because the video is very good. It tells the story very well in a short time, and I think the images and the voiceover and the script for the video were very good. So.
Then Reed.
Yeah, two quick things. One is the video was really great, amazing, and a very small thing on it is I just would include the adjective impoverished mother because no one else gets a sad adjective before their title. That's interesting, maybe a small thing, but and then the other thing I was curious about is I'd love to be able to access the source research and the list of the 73. Anything like that would be really cool.
Yeah, there's a whole rating system and comments we went through, so it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. All right.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned before, the presentations are going in a box folder, but if anyone has any other resources that can accompany their presentations, I can also upload that. So we'd be really happy to do that. Rebecca, your presentation should be up there. Are you not see yourself?
No.
It's not that hard. Just 1 second. That one you?
Yeah.
All right.
That's good. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much. We are the Senior Fellow Candidate Research Team. On behalf of my colleagues and Dakota and Christiana that couldn't be here, but worked very hard to make this happen. Welcome to our presentation. First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about what a senior fellow is. Basically, it's a leading social entrepreneur at advanced stages of their work that can contribute to Ashoka with her ideas, energy, and networks. The specific ways that a senior fellow can contribute is by engaging in high-level problem solving, supporting or mentoring new fellows, increasing the critical mass of the fellowship at the country level, and also helping other people, perhaps outside the Ashoka network or potential partners, to see and draw value from the power of everyone a change maker. These senior fellows will become part of the global network for change. So that's also a benefit that they can draw from being part of Ashoka. And they can take different roles, either leading fellow groups, nominating other fellows, working with venture collaborative entrepreneurship, or key senior leaders, among other potential benefits. Well, the selection process, it has like two main branches. The first one is the regular selection process, it's the same process that any other fellow would follow, which is the nomination, the first opinion, the second opinion, the panel evaluation, and the board decision. However, there's a second way or selection process that's called graded stream of engagement approach that starts with the nomination and the first opinion, but then Ashoka engages this senior fellow into different activities, such as being part of an evaluation panel or help to spread the word about the everyone a change maker across potential partners. Throughout this process in which the senior fellow is being engaged in Ashoka, the staff members from Ashoka gather evaluations, make a file of this fellow, and all these evaluations are gathered by the Diamond Hub. They process this information, they take it to the panel, and if there's a consensus across for this fellow, then the board can make a decision and select it. And basically, the main criteria to select and evaluate this candidate throughout this process, whether it's through the regular selection process or the graded stream, is comprised of five main criteria. They're having a new idea or a new solution or approach to a new problem, a social problem. Creativity is always having vision, having passion for trying to solve a problem with a social intent. Entrepreneurial traits, identifying an opportunity and fully commit to it. So have this vision, have this passion, and not being scared of uncertainty, and always like try to commit to this social goal as much as possible. Social impact, so it's not enough to have like a positive impact, but you have to go beyond, think big, and think about like a national or like a regional change, a framework change. And finally, it has to have an ethical fiber. So it's very important that this potential senior fellow is trusted by his or her peers. So trust and in these fellows among their communities is very important.
Great. So as we got started, we kind of got in and talked to the mentoring fellowship team, and they told us why this is happening, and there's just a big push in Ashoka right now to elect more senior fellows, and so they gave us that groundwork and they walked us through the whole selection process, which was really interesting for us because we got to learn more about how fellows are selected and how this happens. And then we were handed a list of candidates, and we're basically told, okay, go research them, try to figure out where they're from, their story, and if you think that they would be a good candidate to push forward. And so this is kind of a picture for you to show one of the really fun things that we got to do. All of the candidates that we were looking at were in the health field. And so we got to go full immersion into the health field and got to learn a lot about what is happening in health and what kind of really innovative things are happening. And so these are just words that were thrown a lot as we were creating these briefs. And so our contribution, what it ended up being, like I mentioned, the training sessions, and then we created
30 extensive research briefs. We listed the new idea, basically did as much research and synthesizing of information as possible. We had weekly progress meetings with the venture and fellowship team to check in and see how things were going and make sure we were on the right track. And then we also met with the nominator, David Alward, that helped us discern as we were getting closer to the end of the process which candidates he knows personally, that because he nominated them, so who he felt was really valuable to push forward and how we could kind of add to the research we had already done. And so this gives you an example of, this is the brief template that we use, and we filled all of this out for everyone. Like I said, we highlighted their path, their impact, and where they look to be going. And our methods for this was just a lot of using our millennial generation search skills, search Google, LinkedIn, whatever we could find.
Okay, so while we were doing this project, we were trying to figure out if a candidate was good enough to push forward to recommend to venture to research more, or one we thought was obviously really powerful in their sector, but maybe not senior fellow material. So this is an example of candidate A who we thought would have been good to push forward in the process. And I think the biggest thing that we took away, and being a big factor if they were a good candidate or not, is if they had a new idea that hadn't been seen before in the health sector, that not only was powerful, but being a scratch on history and was changing social bonds on a continental level. So it was like, it'd be pretty substantial stuff. And basically, and it also had the ethical fibers of doing work for the right reasons, but for the most part, all the candidates that we were sent, all 30, 35 of them, were like really high up in these companies doing really important work. It was mostly a matter of, did they have a new idea that we could point to in our research and say, yes, this was created by him or her, this is something that they founded, and be able to kind of champion them for this idea. And that could be something like, for example, like a founder of an M-Health company that uses SMS technology in an innovative way to changes public health across the African continent. So that could be something like an SMS messaging system has already been used before in the past, but this could be someone who uses it not only to track, let's say, data across a certain project in certain countries in Africa, but also maybe like tracking births that had not even been tracked before, or tracking like supplies being sent across the country. So like using data or using a technology that already existed, but then being able to tweak it in really innovative ways that really changed how these health issues were responded to in certain countries. Oops. And then can it be bad? I don't say bad, but it's one that maybe like a candidate who would have been maybe a good fellow, but maybe not a good senior fellow. So this would be someone who perhaps was either a CEO on a lot of different boards of different companies, and it definitely was in a good managerial position, but we couldn't find an innovative idea or innovative technology that was really pinpoint to them. So be someone as kind of counterpart to the last example, someone who's CEO of an M-Health company, which connects patients to remote doctors in a developing country, but then that idea has already been used before. So we would say, okay, so what's new about this? What's innovative about this? And have you differentiate this from things that have already happened in the past? So that's something we struggled with a lot with people that we really wanted to push forward, and well, because they were doing great work, but they didn't seem to be anything that new that happened in years before. Also, another question we had on our template was, what's Canada's potential in terms of the future, like other areas of looking to push forward? And a lot of times, candidates we didn't choose to push forward the ones that we just had been doing great research, but there wasn't anything new on their docket looking to the future.
Yeah, so just to wrap it up, our experience was with a lot of positives and negatives. Some of the positives is that we really got to get a perspective on the senior fellow search process. And that's really great and really is the engine that underlays a lot of the work that Ashoka does, because picking our fellows and our senior fellows are so important to every single aspect of Ashoka. We got to learn about really cool people. We had this whole list of people that we just got to research and really delve into, and so that was cool. And also we got to learn about the health field, and I know nothing about health really, so it was cool to learn all these buzzwords about health and integrative like medicine. It was cool. Difficulties, obviously Google, LinkedIn, and resumes can only go so far in helping you understand a person, so it's really reading. We struggled a lot with trying to like taking that information and actually trying to synthesize it and deciding whether or not this candidate was strong enough to go forward in the process. So really learning how to use our information and then go with that.
Another difficulty that we had was understanding the reasoning behind nomination. So a huge thing that we learned through this whole process is that when we had done our initial research, just given the names, we couldn't really find an idea for a lot of these people. We struggled really hard, and we were like, why did David Elberg even give these names if like we can't even find a new idea? After talking with him, he had named a bunch of things that we just had overlooked about, you know, I think what had happened was the fact that we had different concepts of what the new idea was. So that was the biggest difficulty. So new idea, I think, in our minds was like, did they create a technology? Did they like find or create some kind of medicine or produce some kind of research? And that's like great. But I think new idea in terms of Ashoka means like, are they tearing down walls? Are they bringing in, are they engaging in like cross-sector collaborations to create this type of innovation that like this field has not seen, but maybe it's been seen in other fields. So it's really expanding our idea, new idea, yeah. The recommendations are kind of reiterating the same thing. Maybe in the future, we'd love to have like filled out briefs beforehand, just so to make the process easier. And again, like expanding on this definition of what a new idea is. And I think we can all take that back in terms of like how we see the new place. Yeah.
We have 2 questions, if there's any. Does anyone look promising for election?
Yeah, there's like a lot of really great people, but no.
Can't say I was confidential. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you approach anyone else other than
We only had 2 nominators, so David was one of them. So the other one was Alhan, and we just had time.
And as Intern Fellowship is like continuing to do this push, this is really just the first step of it. They're still reaching out to other people on other teams to get nominations.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're at 2:30. There's one more group left for anyone who can stay. I know other people have appointments, but yeah, it'd be great to have less group come up and do things. And I think there's like a field trip at some point today.
Yeah, 3.
At 3, okay, so we'll finish before then.
Don't worry, they won't use that.
All right.
All right, maybe before we start, we can introduce ourselves. I'm Sonia. I'm Asha. I'm Amanda.
I'm in the same Ishani and Bahar, but they're with us is great.
Yeah. Can I see a show of hands who saw the actually kind of sketchily made tree in Snap Central? Yay! Now who actually put a post-it and answered the question? Yay, not so much here, but so that's something that sort of disjunct is also something that we're going to talk about later in the presentation. But to give a quick overview, our project was basically how are you a change maker? And the genesis of our idea was really because we as people just coming into Ashoka was suddenly confronted with all the jargon that we talk about. You know, we say change maker, we say team with team, so what in the world does that mean? And is it kind of ironic that it's an exclusive term for an organization that's founded on principles of inclusivity? And so we actually met so many times in the first like 2 or 3 weeks just to hash out kind of feelings and like understanding the why is it that we're using so many words that actually might not mean anything to people outside of Ashoka. And so our original project was to sort of discover whether people who work in Ashoka have a different understanding of what change making means versus people out in the public. And we had this grandiose idea of we'll do one pilot in the Ashoka office and one pilot in the National Mall and see like if our results are different. But as we quickly realized, there's a lot to uncover just simply within the Ashoka office. So we ended up just doing that tree in Synapse Central and not in National Mall. And so I think we're going to talk about what exactly we wanted to discover about our buzzword change maker.
Okay. So Sonia kind of went over our general idea, but here's kind of our plan. First, we really wanted to focus on unpacking kind of the term change maker. And we asked the question, how are you a change maker, as opposed to what is a change maker to you, or how can we be a change maker? Because
we really wanted to unpack kind of the intuitive side of it, because I think a lot of us here, even after a few months, kind of have an understanding of what change making means within Ashoka and kind of using some of that jargon and language. But we really wanted to see how people, I guess, more felt about being change makers and how they recognize traits of change making in their own lives. And so we focused the driving question on how are you a change maker, and then we also had a series of other questions as well to kind of support deeper thinking about change making in terms of yourself. So is it conventional, unconventional? Do you have any role models of change makers and so on? So we included those around the tree.
So what we thought is following keeping up with the Ashoka tree, we created this tree. We thought Synapse Center would be the best place to kind of display this, because we were allowed to, and B, because it was supposed to be a collaborative space. That's where people are supposed to come together to work. So we thought it would be a good idea. Synapse Center would be a good idea. And just to kind of give context based on where we were coming from, we included the supporting questions that Kennedy was talking about, kind of get things like the thoughts moving.
So we uncovered some surprising discoveries. The main one was that a lot of people put down post-its that didn't really have to do with their work at Ashoka, what they did outside of work. So a few examples of that were by forcing others to view problems through different points of view, empowering others to believe in their abilities, and by setting a good example. And another discovery was that people had like multiple forms of change making, so not just, I guess, like the conventional ways we think of, but other ways as well, such as by recycling, by practicing empathy with everyone, and by working as an unpaid intern. And then another one was that we discovered like a lot of mentions of people putting down like examples of role models they had in their lives, and these are like potential, and we discovered that like role models have a potential to really influence people, inspire our networks. So a few examples of that were my professors are change makers because they make serious efforts to help our students grow as people. My mom's a change maker for teaching my family how to love, give, and forgive. And my dad, because he's a doctor and finds diseases in people's lungs.
So one of the surprises that ended up happening after everything was all said and done was that we actually had a much lower response rate than we had anticipated. We thought that it would be like a really simple thing, you just like get a post note, you write down your thoughts, and you just like put it up. All of it should take like 15 seconds max, but it was actually really hard to get people to just like go to the tree and like, post on it. So we're wondering, is Synapse Central, like if this now is a collaborative space, what else can we do to get people to come or to participate in office-wide things? So that's like one of the questions that we were left with.
Another surprising insight we gained from the project is the fact that so few people, I guess, grounded their answers in Ashoka jargon, like terms like frame change or even the each skills we talk about in change makers. Wasn't brought up as much as we thought, even or explicitly. A lot of times there were like patterns, like like by listening, by having empathy. A lot of times, or those answers came up, but it didn't come up as explicitly as we expected. And so that again, it kind of brings us back to our original point, like is change maker an accessible idea for the public?
And the third insight was that there was a lot of difficulty generating answers in Start. And as we are trying to make this big push as an organization to the ideology that everyone's a change maker, I think it's important for us to understand ourselves what change maker means and what the term means to us. And we found that so many people couldn't like come up with. They had difficulty generating answers, even though we sent out emails. People knew about this happening. So I feel like, one of the primary things that came out of this project was, as Ashokans, we need to understand ourselves and understand the concept that is change making, and it's clearly something that not all of us have understood and made the attempt to understand. I'm not sure if there's the attempt, but and this could also be a little skewed because we're more interns as opposed to staff, but I think it was quite effective of how Ashoka has understood the term
and only after everyone in the organization understands it can we try to translate it to everyone else.
There was also like we found there was like we even just like sat down one day and we like Facebook message all our friends and we just like straight up just like how are you a change maker, and like people just didn't really have a response. They're like, I don't like you actually want me to answer this, or like oh like yeah we can give you change, like I can give you 5 singles for a $5 bill. Yeah, okay. So that was really interesting. And then the last thing is, so we were left with some bigger questions that came to mind after doing all this. So one really interesting question was, does your team, like what team you're on in Ashoka, affect your conception of change making? So I know that I'm on Changemakers, and a lot of our focus is like outside of the Ashoka network, like outside of the fellow network. So does that mean that we approach change making from a more like public accessible scale, or search? I know a lot of people on search like look for people with like change making experience or social entrepreneurship experiences that affect how they view change making. Another one was, like we said, is change maker an accessible term for the public? A lot of our friends like didn't take us seriously when we asked them. So like, how can we get people to like really answer in a serious way? And then the last thing was just in general, how do we get more like office-wide things to take off? Is it like through emails, like consistent emails, or like going around and asking people to like contribute to our tree or things like that? That was our project. It kind of took some twists and turns, but we found a lot of things along the way. Does anyone have any questions? I know we like both.
What would you like to teach your interns given the project?
I think one of the definitely one of the core things, like tangible items, would be like learning about like what tips and tricks you can learn to get the staff and like, the office to engage with whatever you're doing. So whether or not that's like sending emails that are really short, but like point out like this is the part of a project and like this is what you can do, and it'll take you like 10 seconds to get more engagement, or like learning like where to put things in like central areas, or like being like brave enough in like staff-wide meetings to say like, hey everyone, like contribute to the tree. Those are like more.
I guess something more intangible is as we conclude our summers at Ashoka, we've been thoroughly indoctrinated. So when we think changemaker and like we say it out in public, we know what we're talking about, but nobody else really does. But as you can see from our tree and people's responses from it, changemaker is really just a word that we put to an already existing concept that is inherently accessible to everyone. So I would suggest future interns, like when you are talking with friends outside of Ashoka, instead of relying so heavily on changemakers because it's a comfortable word, you should try to think about different synonyms and more accessible ways to explain what you're talking about.
And another point off of that, I know sometimes I see myself as a change maker, but only 9 to 5. So I think it'd be really useful for future interns, even future staff members, to start to internalize and say, ask myself, like, am I a change maker outside of work? What are the things I already do? What are the things I can't do? I found kind of that introspection really useful. So,
yeah. And I think the primary focus was trying to unpack the term itself. And I mean, given the lack of responses, we couldn't really give you like how people like understand that term. But just I feel like if the future interns were to engage the staff on a personal level and how they practice it, trying to translate that to people outside of the Ashoka network would be easier. So just
Any more questions? All right.
Thank you.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I know we're over time. Asha, does anyone know you for the field trip that we're all going on?
No.
Okay.
But that was really a lot.
And any questions about bills tonight?
What's the address again?
It's on the event.
Oh.
I don't remember exactly what it is there.
Thank you.
Bills.
Oh,
Event.
it's okay. You can see the building.
Make sure to sign up for goodies to bring.
Yay.
I'll let you know.